Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on volume 24 of Ace of the Diamond, Act 2, chapters 211 to 219. So, we last left off against our old team here. Sato was facing Sousei, and facing Nagira was about to come up to bat, and Furuya's been doing fine in this game, I feel like. It's that Miyuki can't figure out what their coach is trying to do. And so Nara has gotten on base. There's a runner on first and third. There's no outs. They really don't need Sousei to score. And Nagira, our ace, is coming up to bat. And so Miyuki is trying to figure out what to do. And Furuya's doing fine. And Miyuki's he's not been able to read the other team, but the other team isn't really going for a specific strategy. It's all individualized, which is not something Miyuki is used to. So it's the quarterfinals. Chris Senpai is there with the others. I may have fangirled a lot last volume, but Chris Senpai and Rio and Masako and then Fumiya and then Masaki are there as well watching. So we know Inashiro and Ichidai third are going into the Sims. We don't know the fourth team, and then obviously it's the winner of this game. So the fourth team doesn't matter. They're going to face Inashiro and lose. You just know it. It's like, what a twist. What if TERUJIMA was like, you thought Inashiro was going to make it to the finals, but it's this no-name team we've never heard of, and they turn out to be this big, scary bad guy, which is kind of what happens in Slam Dunk, so I can't really knock it. Slam Dunk kind of has the same thing happened in it, kind of. So, I mean, it's not unheard of. It's just, TERUJIMA has built up Inashiro this whole time. It would just be absolutely hilarious if, like, you were an Inashiro fan and they don't make it into the finals and everybody had been banking on them. It's like, what? But yeah, so I'm pretty excited to see what's going to happen in these chapters. The last volume was such a treat, and I was fangirling so hard, so I'm putting this out before volume 23 comes out, actually, because I couldn't wait. I had to go ahead, and I'm going to be out of town this weekend, so usually on the weekends I read Ace of the Diamond. Usually like on Friday or Saturday I'll read Ace of the Diamond, but since I'm going to be out of town this weekend, I was like, I'll just go ahead and read it now. So I'm reading this on a Monday, so in a couple days, volume 23 will be out on Patreon and volume 22 on YouTube, so we'll see. But I'm excited. I hope y'all are too. Let's not waste any more time though, shall we? We are going to read volume 24 of Ace of the Diamond Act 2, chapters 211 through 219, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. We get our first manga cliffhanger, huh? Our first real manga cliffhanger. I think up until now, I've not found the cliffhangers of the manga to be like, oh, I can't wait. There have been cliffhangers with the manga so far, but I've always been able to like stop reading and be like, oh, I can wait a couple days. Now I'm like, how dare you? How dare you? So man, I didn't think at first I would have a lot of notes with this volume because the first 2 chapters of this volume went by like at that. They were like done. 211 and 212, they were such fast chapters that I was like, I don't really have any notes to take. And then no, we got some notes. So it's not, we got some notes at the end of this. But man, TERUJIMA, what are you doing? Why can't you let our boys just go into a game without any worries? Why do you have to do this to us? Why? You just got done making Nori Senpai the guardian spirit of Sato, and now there's something wrong with his hand. With the nerves or something. Why can't we have nice things, TERUJIMA? Why can't we have nice things? So, okay, let's talk about this. Chapters 211 and 212 we're done. They went by so quickly. I was like, oh my gosh. So yeah, Furuya, 4 splitters in a row. Miyuki's like, let's just do it. Why not? Why shouldn't we just do it? And so I love that Furuya, it's such a good development for him because he's gone from somebody that constantly thought he had to be the reason the team won, kind of like the May dilemma back during the summer tournament. Or during the spring, and him realizing that no, he can trust in his fielders. They're reliable. He can have faith in them, and it's okay. So it's a nice little bit of growth for him. I like that Miyuki's proud of him in these moments. You can tell Miyuki and Furuya have a great relationship, and so you can tell Miyuki is really proud of him, and it shows. But the game is tied 1-1. but he does get the 2 outs with that keystone combo. Old Kuramochi and Haruichi. I love it. Get Nara and Nagira out. It's great. Sawamura is still supportive with the 3 outs. It's wonderful. And then, man, I love Rio having that conversation relayed to him, being like, we'll be that great keystone duo. I love Rio is just so proud of his brother and Kuramochi. You can just tell there's lots of senpais being proud of their kohei in this volume, and it's wonderful. I love the senpais are all like super proud of their underclassmen. It's great. But yeah, also being told is that Kuramochi the cheetah, do not underestimate him. He was on fire this volume, like at the very beginning. I love after that double play when Kuramochi comes up to bat and the reporter's like, Kuramochi is deadly. Once he reaches third base, they're like, the run is as good as gone. I'm like, yes! Once Kuramochi gets to third base, it's over. Like, he can run so fast. Again, if they make it to finals, I'm like him versus Carlos. It's going to be like, because Inashiro's making it to the finals. We'll talk about that. But I'm just like, okay, sure. other team, sure thing. But yeah, so I love that Nara, it's funny because they talk about how when we had this, with Nagira, there was runners on first and third, and they had the whole incident, and the double play happens, and they managed to make it home. But with Nara, the thing is they managed to get out, right, with runners on first and third against Furuya. But when it's reversed and Sato has runners on first and third, or Sousei does, the thing is that Nara doesn't have the duo with his other, with the short between him. It isn't like Kuramochi and Haruichi. Nara doesn't have that. And so even though there's a similar situation mirrored where you had with Nagira, you had somebody on first and third, and now it's reversed, and it ends up working for Sato's favor, basically. But yeah, Sawamura, I love these, like, Cap the Great, use the Cap cannon. I'm like, Sawamura, you and your nicknames, I love you. And then chapter 212 makes Miyuki look great. Chapter 212 makes Miyuki look so good. I went back and took so many screenshots when I went back into the notes. Like, Miyuki just looks great. That TERUJIMA when TERUJIMA feels like making Miyuki look good, he really makes Miyuki look good. I'm like, And then Sousei's coach, I do really like that Nagira, he gets like kind of stiff and like anxious because Miyuki's like trying to predict what Miyuki's going to do, and he has that vision of Miyuki hitting the ball and slamming it, and he's like, oh shit, I don't want that to happen. And he gets tense. And then I love that Sousei's coach is like, hey, look over here. He's like, calm down. You got this. It's okay. Just chill. You're fine. I love that Sousei's coach is supportive, and the team recognizes that. The team instantly knows that the coach is doing all they can to calm Nagira down. I'm like, that's his coach. I really ended up liking Sousei's coach a lot in this volume because he's such a genuine guy, and even though he's weird, he kind of has like a Kosei kind of genuineness to him that you're like, you're odd, but you're genuine and honest about it, and I like that. And plus, like, I feel like TERUJIMA draws him differently. TERUJIMA does the line work on Sousei's coach differently than any other character I've ever seen in this series. And so I don't know if TERUJIMA's like inserting himself as Sousei's coach or what the deal is, but he draws him differently. The line work is just slightly odd. Like, his face is kind of distorted in a way that you're like, you don't look like any other Ace of the Diamond character. Interesting. But we'll talk more about that later. But yeah, he calms Nagira down just in time for Zono to walk up. Again, this volume is all about senpais looking down on their underclassmen and being proud of them. And so Zono coming up to bat, I love that Masako looks so proud in this moment. And Masako's like, yeah, that's right. You're the fifth hole. I know how this is. And make me proud, Zono. And bases is loaded, and Zono proves it. The bases are loaded, and Zono proves that he is in fact the fifth hole for a reason. And just manages to get a double. And it's great. I love that he says right as he hits it, he's like, if you're after Miyuki, you've got to be a good batter. And he just knocks it out. And then I love that Mizuno ends up on second. They end up scoring 3-1. I love the Masako Rio fist bump where they look over each other and like, yeah, Zono did it. It's like, ah! So many good moments with our upperclassmen in this. So many good moments. But yeah, they end up in the 6th inning being 5-1. I was like, at that point where it was 5-1, I was like, okay, Sato's probably gotten this in the bag. But Sawamura brings up a great point, and we'll get to that. The coach is still encouraging them, even though he's got his back turned. He's just trying to be funny, encouraging them. But yeah, this point here where Yui is like, okay, good. we're good to go. We're 5-1. It's the 7th inning. Got this tied up, right? And Sawamura, I love him being serious in that moment and saying, we cannot underestimate our opponents at any time. He's like, we're in the quarterfinals. Anything can happen in baseball. And Sawamura knows. Sawamura knows from experience just how much one hit can completely shatter a game and completely turn it around, whether it's in your favor or not. And he's like, no, even though we're leading 5-1, it's only the 7th inning. Things can happen. We cannot let our guard down. And I'm like, thank you, Sawamura. I'm like, good. Be on your guard. I'm like, I like that Sawamura. He has learned from experience that you can't do that. But I love it where he looks at you and he's like, but don't worry. He's like, shouldn't you practice? Because after all, he's like, you're Sato's ultimate weapon and our final trump card, our pinch hitter. Just that faith that Sawamura has in Yui to be that keystone factor for the team is just, I love it because Yui has struggled this entire series. Yui has struggled to prove himself, and he feels like he's not proving himself as a catcher. So he's like, well, damn it, if I can't prove myself as a catcher, then I'll be a good batter and I'll just do it this way. Maybe that'll work. And he struggles to feel like he's doing something for the team and being reliable. And Sawamura in this moment is like, yeah, you're like the most reliable guy on our team. And I'm like, it's so sweet because Sawamura has such faith in him, and he's a first year, and a lot of upperclassmen will look down on first years and be like, oh, you guys have a lot to learn. But Sawamura's like, nah, I've been there, and you'll get there too, but you're already like our trump card. It's like, Sawamura, you could not be sweeter. You could not be sweeter. I love it so much. And so, yeah, I like that Chris Senpai, he talks about in this moment right afterwards that the spammed splitters that Miyuki called are starting to show effect, that playing that same pitch over and over again has gotten their batters thinking a certain way, and now you can use fastballs and other balls to trick them. And Chris Senpai's like, that was a good move, that was a good strategy, you can focus on other pitches now. And then I like that Nori, at the end of that chapter, looks to Koshu and he's like, okay, Furuya's pitch count is nearing 100, let's get ready to go in. Like, let's just be ready to go in case if we're needed. It's like, and that leads to chapter 216, which is Guardian Spirit. TERUJIMA, what are you doing with Nori? We're going to talk about that, but I don't like where this is headed. And I'm like, you give us... TERUJIMA has the ability to give you a chapter called Guardian Spirit, which is wonderful, and then 2 chapters later make you go, wait, what are we doing? So, I love it. Sawamura is like the cap rifle bang! I'm like, Sawamura's nicknames are just on point. I can't wait to see this animated. For the record, it's going to be a wonderful experience. But Miyuki's such a troll too. Like, Sawamura's got the cap cannon. Miyuki's like, smashing a pitcher's winning shot feels so good. I was like, oh, you're so devious, Miyuki. So devious. But yeah, we get to the 8th inning. And I feel like, I imagine whenever we get the narration boxes of narration text, I imagine Yuki talking, Tetsuyuki. I imagine him speaking as I'm reading. I'm imagining it's his voice in my head as I'm reading those boxes. But in the 8th inning, Furuya's 113th pitch, that is a fastball. And the way that it's animated, the way that it's drawn, the fastball, like, it was still full steam ahead. Like, Furuya was still doing good. Like, he was still having a good game. His average speed was 145 kilometers per hour with 31 batters. He had 6 hits, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts, and within 2 games, ceded only 1 run. Like, and he pitched for 8 innings. Like, that's good on our boy Furuya. That's a long time for Furuya to pitch. He's doing pretty good with that, right? But yeah, and Sawamura clapping for him, being like, yeah, Furuya, like him being so supportive. But Furuya had a great game. And then in the 9th inning, the 2 starting pitchers were subbed out. Nagira and Furuya were taken out. Yui came in as a pinch hitter. And I love those 2 pages where Yui is a pinch hitter and Sawamura is like so excited for him. And so he manages to get her. He hits the first pitch that comes at him. It's like, not wasting any time. Hits that first pitch, and then everyone's reaction, like Masahi and Koshu are on fire because they're also the first years and they're getting fired up by their fellow first year doing so good. Sawamura is like, Yui the Hercules! I'm like, oh my gosh, Sawamura is so proud. Like, everybody looks so happy. And then they say that Nori, the guardian spirit, came in, and I'm like, okay. And And I love Koshu commenting on it. Like Koshu's a fun person to comment on all of this because he's a first year. So he's not seen the last 2 years that we have seen as the audience. He's not seen season 1 material or the last season. He just knows what he knows based on his own experience. So to him, Nori, he's like, wow. He's like, Nori, he practiced all day just to come in this one inning. But he was so reliable. And when he says like a reliever, he's like, how reassuring for starter pitchers must it be to have him be there as a relief? And I'm like, because Nori's come so far. Like he came from the first season we saw Nori where he was lacking confidence and was a good relief pitcher. Like he's always been a good relief pitcher. Kataoka said that from the start, that Nori's always been a good relief pitcher, but he's lacked so much confidence. And now as a third year, rounding out his career, he's reliable and able to help his team so much. And Koshu sees that result, but we know the process and the journey that Nori's gone on. And so it's just like, it's so wonderful for us to see as the audience Nori's growth. But it's almost, you almost want Koshu to be able to see Nori's development, right? And I kind of feel like that's the case with the third years from season 1, is that we only get to see, we have like Koshu eyes with season 1. We only get to see them at their best. We didn't get to see them struggle and work their way up. And Koshu's kind of in that same boat we were in season 1 looking at the third years. So it's interesting that TERUJIMA uses Koshu as an example, and Koshu's the one monologuing about Nori in this scene. And I feel like that was TERUJIMA's intent, was to have us see that kind of parallel, that Koshu is kind of like the audience surrogate in this moment. I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, chapter 216 is great. I love Guardian Spirit. That's such a good chapter. And then 7-1, Sato's going to the semifinals. Like, okay. Now, Nara, I love that handshake with Nara to Miyuki that he gives, that he's like, do your best in your next game first. And I love in that moment that Miyuki's like, oh, you think we can make it to finals. You think that this next game is just our first game. We're going to go beyond that. And so I love that shot of Miyuki like holding that fist. He's like, his hand was hot and his calluses were rough. He's like, he fought long and hard in this game, but we beat him. And he's like, now it's almost like Nara was giving Miyuki the spirit, being like, go kick Inishiro's ass, go kick Senko's ass, like, do it for us. I'm like, and Miyuki's like, yes, we will. That shot of Miyuki with the fist is so good. TERUJIMA in this volume was just like, do you want Miyuki to look great? Okay, I'll draw it. It's like, all right. But man, these chapters went by very quickly. They honestly did. There were a lot of action in these chapters. And even in the downtime, everything was going pretty quickly. So this may not be a long discussion. I'm already looking at the time. I'm only talking for 10, 15 minutes. I'm like, this may not be a long discussion. I'm already halfway through my notes. But it was just a really good volume. It was just very fast-paced, right? So the reporters come up to talk about Furuya. And talking about, like, he seems like he's back to power, right? Furuya's back in action. But Kataoka, I love that Kataoka's like, now hold your horses. He's like, Furuya had a really good game. He's doing really good. He seems like he's getting back up to form. Because it seemed like the reporters were questioning, being like, do you regret your decision of making Sawamura the ace? And Kataoka's like, no. But Kataoka's like, it depends on how Furuya considers himself. And I like that Kataoka's like, it may be too soon to just call Furuya back in action. He's like, let's slow down. Let's take a step back and let's let Furuya process all this. Like, Furuya, if he's back in action, great. But we need to, like, take it one game at a time, right? And I love that Kawakami, the reporter says Kawakami was the picture of stability. I'm like, and that should have been the first sign that TERUJIMA was like, gonna have something happen whenever somebody's praised a lot. Yeah. So I like that Kataoka says that he's happy with the attitude that the third years have. I'm like, yes, okay. He's happy with the attitude his fellow third years have. Shouldn't be a sign of a red flag, but here we are. And so then Zono, here's the thing. Zono and Sawamura are very, very similar in how they act around their senpai. Sawamura freaks out over Chris, like to the point where it's like hero worship. But Zono kind of does with Masako and Masaki too. Like, he got really super excited and they were like, oh, we'll come see you play. And he's like, you'll come see me play? You think I did good? Okay, like Zono is just as enthusiastic as Sawamura, and I absolutely love it. And then we have Rio. complimenting Kuromochi and Haruichi, like giving a straight up compliment to the point where they're both like, are you my brother? Haruichi's like, are you my brother? And Kuromochi's like, are you Ryo? Like, Ryo being a genuine complimenter. And he says that he doesn't get to play as much at uni because his senpai are lax. And I was like, oh, so that's interesting to get a little bit of insight with Ryo, where he's like, I don't get to play as much because my senpai are lax at uni. And Kuromochi and Haruichi are like, what? Why are you telling us this? What's happening? Are you really Ryo? Kaminado? What's happening? It was great. But yeah, Sawamura, so happy to see Master Chris Senpai. And Chris is like, you don't have to call me Master anymore. I love that Chris is like, you're making me uncomfortable calling me Master. You don't have to do that. But Chris is so happy to see him. And he says he's coming to the semifinals. I will get to fangirl about Chris even more. So yeah, Chris is coming to the semifinals. All right. I was like, because I was feeling bad. I was like, it's going to kind of suck. Like, I know Chris was really happy to see Sawamura be a leader and be the ace, but I was sad that Chris wasn't getting to see Sawamura pitch. And I was like, I really want him to. And I thought maybe he'd try to come to the finals, but him coming to semifinals adds a little pressure there, because it's like, well, will they make it to finals or will they not? How dare you? How dare you, series? So Kelsey on the Discord asked a couple weeks back where I thought the series was now, without manga spoilers. I don't want spoilers, for the record. But she asked where I thought the series was. I think that Sato's going to make it to finals. I think they are. Because I think that the Inashiro-Sato rivalry, the rematch, tying back to season 1. If TERUJIMA doesn't make an act 3, if he's going to end the manga with this, having them face Inashiro again, having them beat Inashiro, I'm not going to jinx it, I'm going to knock on wood, but having them face them again would be so sweet. But that makes me very nervous, because I'm like, okay, if Sato is going to make it to Inashiro, what hell are we going to go through in the semifinals? What hell are we going through? I'm a little worried of what we're gonna have to deal with. Okay, I'm worried, because I'm like, TERUJIMA, if TERUJIMA is gonna make our boys win and go to the finals against Inashiro, he's gonna make them probably go through hell first, and I don't want that. So I'm a little nervous. But no manga spoilers. We will get there. We'll see. The semifinals are going to start next volume, probably. So yeah, there's that. No big deal. It's totally fine. It's fine. But yeah. So anyway. But yeah, we have Sawamura, and he's like, Chris is coming to semifinals. Yui knows who Chris is, which is interesting. Of course Yui knows, because Yui does his homework. Koshu didn't know who he was. But Yui knew instantly, like, what school Chris went to before Sato. So Yui knows the history, which makes sense because Yui's a catcher. So, of course, it could be possible that Yui respects Chris Senpai just as much as Sawamura, which is interesting, right? But Sawamura introducing the first years to Chris. Again, Sawamura, so respectful of his underclassmen. That's one thing that amazes me, is because in the last 2 seasons of the anime, there was this big distinction about the upperclassmen, like being like, we're the upperclassmen, you're the underclassmen, we're the seniority here. And that got brought up a lot. It got brought up with Tamba to Miyuki. When Miyuki got sassy, he was like, mind your elders. It's gotten brought up with Sawamura and Furuya compared to the second and third years. But Sawamura, he doesn't treat his first years like they're inferior. His kohai, he's like, hey, look at these guys. They're so dependable already. Come meet them. Like, he's so kind. And he wants to show them off to Chris and be like, look how awesome our first years are. It's so sweet, right? It's so sweet. And he calls them Wolf Boy and Young Hercules. Yui as Young Hercules is amazing. I freaking love it. I hope it sticks. I love it so much. But yeah. So we get a little reprieve there, and we go see Sousei. And Sousei, having lost, they're not like, I mean, they're tearful, but they're not like full out sobbing about losing. But the coach being humbled that the team bowed to him, and the team recognizing me like, no, you've helped us so much, coach. Like, we love you, and thank you for these last 3 years. And it's really cool because they show like all of the tweets and stuff that are like nasty and trash talking, and the last one they show is when they trash talk the coach. And I'm like, dude, no. Like, this coach was so supportive and kind to them and so helpful. And so whenever his team bows, I got kind of emotional. I was like, oh my God, like, these people were so nasty to this team. And then these players like, you know, applaud their coach for being so supportive. And he's like, I don't deserve it. Like, it's so sweet. Their coach, I ended up really liking Sousei's coach. He's really sweet. He's doing this little weird thing. Like, he's like, come on, guys. Like, I love him. I think he might be one of my favorite coaches. I mean, obviously, there's Kateoka, Kunitomo, Ichidai Third's coach, and Raizo. But you know what? I think what was his name? Jujiro? I think Sousei's coach might have made the top 5. I was waiting for that 5th coach that I really like. I'm going to say it's Kunitomo. My favorite coach is Raizo Todoroki. He's my favorite. I love him. But then it's Kateoka. Then it's Ichidai Third's. Ichidai Third's coach, I love him. He is, between the pistols and, he's a boy. And all the boys, he's my 3rd favorite. And then Kunitomo's my 4th. He's terrifying. He's my 4th favorite. And then Jujiro, or Sousei's coach, he's my 5th. I like those 5 coaches. Those are my top 5. I'm all about them. They're great. But yeah, so that was so sweet. And then so there's this little panel. It's this tiniest little panel, but it's like Terujima, you saint. It's the tiniest little panel in the chapter, but it's Sawamura showing off Asada to Masako, because Masako and Kuromochi were Sawamura's roommates when he was a first year, and then Masako graduated, and then Asada came in. So it's almost like when I was on a speech team at a university, we were all, our mascot was the red bird. That was our mascot at the university I attended. And we had a thing called Big Bird, Little Bird. And it was kind of like, we didn't have a dorm. I didn't stay in a dorm there. I lived off campus. But we had a system where when you came in, if you were a junior or a senior at university, you were a big bird to a freshman. Like, when you came in as a junior, you became a big bird to a freshman. They were your little bird. And you were supposed to, like, go on campus trips with them. You were supposed to eat lunch with them. You went and did, like, when we went on speech team trips, we'd go and you'd sit beside them on the bus. Like, they were your little bird. And you were supposed to help them get acclimated to, like, the team and the campus and university life and everything. And so I feel kind of like, it was sort of like a Sawamura to Asada. It's kind of like that relationship. That was our big bird, little bird. And I remember my little bird, like, we'd always, like, eat lunch together and do that. And then when you had, like, reunions, the alumni would come in, and I transferred in. So my big bird was a senior at the time, so I transferred in as a junior. So I only knew them for 1 year. But then my little bird I knew for, like, 2.5 years. And so it was fun because when we had alumni events, your big birds would all come around and you'd all get together and be like, oh, well, it was like a family tree of this were the big birds and these were our little birds. And it was like a chain, right? Like generations of competitors that all like been big birds and little birds to one another. So that's exactly the vibe I got from this moment, seeing the 4 roommates together. I'm like, it just warmed my heart. I absolutely loved it. And then what also warmed my heart was Furuya and Nori doing the little fist bump at the end, like Furuya being like doing the little fist bump at Nori being like, we connected. Terujima, my heart. Oh my God. Yep. So then we can only have nice things for so long. Chapter 218 is a stressful chapter. Reading the Room. It's a stressful chapter. And reading the room, the whole concept of reading the room is like knowing what's being unspoken. That's when you read the room, you like know what's not being spoken. You can see a situation. But so we have the 4 top teams announced. We have Inashiro, we have Sato, we have Ichidai Third, and Sugata. Who cares? I feel bad for Sugata. Like, you know, Terujima does not care because Sugata, like, they had 1 page dedicated to that quarterfinal. 1 page dedicated to the quarterfinal between Sugata and Ichidai, like, Sugawara or whatever. They were like 1 page dedicated and they're like, okay, yeah, this is that 14. Again, I talked about Slam Dunk. In Slam Dunk, there is the qualifiers to make it to nationals, much like this series. And you had Shohoku, you had Kainen, You had Rionen, and then you had a fourth team nobody cared about, and that team didn't even matter. So it was like it's the same deal here. It's the same deal here. It's the same as Slam Dunk. You've got the three teams that you're like, okay, they've been there from the start. Then now that we're entering the home stretch, they're here again in the qualifiers. They made the semifinals, and then there's this fourth team that just got to be there. It's the same deal. So I'm like, I highly doubt that Sugata, unfortunately, is going to be Inashiro. Although, it would be the move of the century if TERUJIMA went there. TERUJIMA, if he had the balls to do that, I would laugh my ass off. If he had the balls to be like, yeah, this team Sugata you've never heard of, they're going to be Inashiro and make it to the finals. Like, I would lose it. I would absolutely lose it if that was the case. But I highly doubt it. Sure. So yeah, July 26th, the date is set. I just get such a kick out of this. So the reporters talk about the genius third-year pitcher versus the young ace with the rapid growth and all the potential. And so Kosei, like I feel like it's very fitting that on the same page of the chapter, we have Kosei sending Sawamura a text that's like July 26th, the date set. It's like they're setting up for a date, a pitcher date, a duel, if you will. And it's on the same page as the page where Asou decides to go confess his love. I'm like, fitting. TERUJIMA, you're not subtle at all. But yeah, Seki. I love that Seki is like the biggest wingman for Asou. Seki is like, because everybody's like, what is Asou going to go do? What is he up to? And Seki's like, sometimes a man's just got to do what a man's got to do. And it's like, what are you talking about? I love that Seki is the ultimate like hype man for Asou and like a total wingman. He's like, you got this, Asou. Go tell her how you feel. And it's like, oh my God. But yeah, Miyuki. He is surprised when Nabe tells him about Sousei's strategy. He's like, well, that's really reckless. I'm like, Miyuki, you are one to talk about reckless and bold, sir. You are one to talk. But Nabe's like, yeah, Koshu figured it out. Nabe doesn't say that Koshu figured it out, but we as the audience know that Koshu figured it out. Miyuki's like, really? What? So, according to Nabe, that was the strategy, right? And Sawamura, I like that Sawamura, in this moment, he's like, you know what? My Furuya and Nori did their best pitching today to make sure that I could pitch tomorrow or in 2 days without worries. So I'm going to get my rest. I'm going to rest. I'm going to do what they asked me to. I'm going to take it seriously. I'm like, good for you, Sawamura. I'm proud of you, man. And so I like, though, that at the same time, Sawamura's like, yeah, I'll rest, but do you want to see my slider and my curveball tomorrow? Like him whispering to Koshu, and Koshu's like, why are you whispering? Like, I love that Sawamura. It's so funny to see the dynamic because it's weird. Sawamura has this dynamic with Chris, Koshu, and Miyuki, right? And it's funny because Chris, Koshu, and Miyuki are like there's like a parallelogram. We have a parallelogram where you have Chris on one side, Miyuki on the other side, and Koshu in the middle. Because there's parts of Koshu that are like Miyuki, and there's parts of Koshu that are like Chris. And so Koshu's kind of this little conglomerate of the two, right? And so you have Sawamura, who's much like a gremlin around Miyuki. He's a gremlin and he's constantly flustered around Miyuki and he's like, oh, Tanuki senpai and blah, blah, blah. And Miyuki seems to constantly get the better of Sawamura. That's kind of the situation. But then you have Chris senpai that Sawamura is like utterly reverent around. And he's like, oh, you're the best, Chris senpai, and I'm not worthy and blah, blah, blah. And then you have his relationship with Koshu. And in one situation, Koshu kind of treats Sawamura with reverence, and so there's a kind of Chris Sawamura like dynamic between Koshu and Sawamura. Only Sawamura is like Koshu is to Sawamura like Sawamura is to Chris. There's that dynamic, but then Sawamura kind of becomes like Miyuki around Koshu and is like all gremlin-y and is like, "Come on, you want to do this?" And Koshu's like, "I don't know how to take this," and so it's almost like Sawamura is to Koshu how Miyuki is to Sawamura. So it's a very weird Venn diagram, sort of, not parallelogram, but a Venn diagram situation where you have Sawamura and Koshu treating each other kind of like Miyuki and Chris are treated with Sawamura, and it's all flip-flopped around. It's very interesting. But Ryo, he gets that picture. He sends that picture of him with Kuramuchi and Haruichi. That's very cute. I like that Ryo is able to get a picture with them. But then Nori! We can't have nice things. He goes to reach for the Pocari Sweat, goes to reach for that product placement, and it falls out of his hand. So the first thing I was thinking of is nerve damage. Like he's got some nerve damage in his hand. My dad had his fingers cut off in an accident. Like not all the way cut off. They were like, it's really gross, but they were like cut to the point, like he was messing with an auger and it turned on accident and went like this and just like cut his fingers, and they didn't all come off all the way. They were just like hanging there. It's really gross, but he got him sewed back on. And so if you see my father, his hand, you can't tell because it's all calloused over and you can't really tell that there's even scars there, but he said that his nerves are kind of shot, and when he goes like sometimes to hold a wrench or something, it just like falls, and he's like, I just don't have any feeling. So that's what I thought instantly, was that Nori reached for the cup and he just lost the nerve feeling in his hand, which is bad because that probably means like it's something that could develop and be a permanent thing, which I don't know what Nori's plans are. We've not really talked about Nori as a third year, like what Nori was planning. I never imagined Nori going pro. I never imagined Nori playing baseball after high school, if I'm honest. I didn't. I always assumed, because Nori's like, he fought so hard to get to this position as a third year, and he's never been one. Nori's story has always been that he's not naturally talented. He's not a prodigy. He's literally the definition of someone who poured everything into something they were good at, their one niche in baseball, and he's made it work. And he's dedicated and passionate about it. But I've never imagined Nori going pro. And I always thought that maybe he might play university baseball, but like he'd be going to school for something first. And I could see Nori as like a physical therapist or something. And then he like becomes a physical therapist and then plays baseball in his spare time. Or plays for a university team, I don't know. But this whole nerve, I think it's nerve endings, and that worries me because that's not usually something that is easily corrected, and usually something that maybe does not get better over time. So I'm like, I don't know. I don't like where it's headed, TERUJIMA. I don't like where it's headed, especially since you just spent the last half of volume establishing how reliable Nori is and the guardian spirit he is, and now he's going to be injured. Why can't Sato go a game without an injury? Why can't we have nice things, TERUJIMA? Never have I seen a team as injured unnecessarily as Sato. And so then Zono, he hits the ball, and I didn't realize it until I went back and looked at the chapter, but he hit the ball, and the ball went down and like hit his ankle or his shin. He wasn't wearing guards, and everybody's like, get the cold spray. I'm like, Zono, you can't get it. It's the semifinals game. Why can't we just have a team at its best go into this game? But there's at least a silver lining. Asou confessed his love. Asou confessed his love to Nagisa, Murase Nagisa from the tennis club, and confessed his love, and it went over well. And Seki's like, look at him, he did it. And so as Nori's like holding his hand at the end of the chapter, I'm like, damn it, stop. I'm like, I wondered, Nagisa, her last name being Nagisa, I instantly thought of the anime Free, and there's a character named Nagisa in that. I was like, if we're looking at this in the same universe as Free, I was like, is this Nagisa's cousin or something? Can we tie these things together, maybe? I don't know. But then we have chapter 219, which is the last chapter. And so we find out the scout for Ichidai's game. He was there the whole time. They kept tying back to him. They kept showing him in the stands, and I was like, who the hell is that? But he was a scout for Ichidai 3rd. I'm like, so he was their Nabe. Okay. And Manaka-san shows up. I remembered his name now that I have it in the manga where I can actually see it. Manaka shows up. He's grown his hair out a little bit. Still doesn't have any eyebrows. But him and the other third years show up. Kosei has that text from Sawamura. It's like, indeed, let's do our best. Sawamura's like being the most level-headed and non-emotional, and Kosei's like, all right. But yeah, I like that when Manaka talks to Kosei, at first Kosei's like, yeah, my team is really reliable. Like, I know I can pitch well because they're going to be there to back me up and they're going to score runs. And Manaka's like, whoa, how mature of you, Kosei. That's so mature. Maybe you have changed. And then he's like, we'll be heroes like the MCU. And he's like, nope, you haven't changed. I love that Kosei like has a thing for superheroes. He has a thing for the MCU. I want to imagine what Kosei thinks, if Kosei thinks he's Iron Man or Captain America, or Kosei being as weird as he would be Captain America because he's from Japan, but he'd be Captain America. I could see that just because it's Kosei. I could see it. Why not? He's like, I'll be the hero. And Manaka's like, yeah, no, he's not changed. So I really liked the idea of seeing the third year, Sumichidai third, coming back, much like we've seen with Sato, seeing their senpai come back as well. But yeah, so we cut back to Sato. Asou is invigorated by love. Him and Seki are just like kick flipping and heel flicking, heel kicking and all that. And everybody's like, what the hell? I love that Kuramochi's like, love. I love that everybody's like, what? Asou has a girlfriend? What's happening? And meanwhile, Nori, so not so subtly, says that he's not pitching like he normally is. He's like, oh, I'm going to take it easy. I don't like it. I don't like it at all, TERUJIMA. I don't like what you're doing with Nori, but at least Nori may be somewhat self-aware. I don't know. Maybe Nori will talk to Chris at semifinals about it. I don't know. He needs to talk to somebody about it. Don't hide your injury, Nori. If it's even an injury. And then I love Sawamura's soft face where Wakana, she says she's going to come to semifinals too. So that's the thing. One thing I do want to note, first of all, is that Sawamura, he doesn't seem nervous about Chris and Wakana being there. Because I could see in the past, with past games, Sawamura would be nervous about Wakana and Chris Senpai coming. He'd be like, oh, I gotta do good. I gotta do the best I can. But here he almost seems like at peace. He's like, okay, cool. They're gonna be there to support me. Awesome. Like, I like that. I like that a lot. I also like her icon is a penguin with a little cap on. It's cute. But also, let me say, for the record, every time Sawamura has a soft look on his face from a text, Koshu's like, is it Amahisa? I love that, one, Koshu almost like ships Sawamura and Amahisa together, it seems like, where he's like, is it Amahisa? Is that why you look so genuinely and soft? And Sawamura's like, what? Sawamura has the potato face again. It's back. In the Discord on Patreon, I made an emote, the Sawamura's potato face. Is that what the face that he makes to it's that face he makes to Koshu? It's amazing. But we call it the potato face. It's back. But I love that Koshu thinks that one. And also I'm like, does Koshu think Sawamura has no other friends other than Amahisa that he texts? Because whenever Chris texted him, he's like, is that Amahisa? He's like, no, it's Chris Senpai. And now it's Wakana. He's like, no, it's my childhood friend, Wakana. I love that he has to establish that Wakana is his childhood friend, not his potential girlfriend. He's like, we grew up together. And Koshu makes it sound like he grew like in the mountains as a ninja. And Sawamura's like, your understanding of the countryside is horrible. And I like that Miyuki in that moment is kind of looking back like, what's going on? What are we talking about? It's great. But yeah, they're texting again. And Koshu thinking it's Amahisa every time is like a running joke with the series that I freaking love. It's so good. But yeah, so we cut to the coaches talking about what we're going to do. And Ochiai is like, we're facing Amahisa, Kosei, and Ishidai third, one of the top teams in the nation. We can't concede. 5 or 10 runs is inconceivable. We can't concede 3 runs. It's over if we do. So I'm like, damn it, are we going to be conceding 3 runs? Is that what we're going to get to? TERUJIMA, if you're foreshadowing and you're going to stress me out through the semifinal game, I'm going to eat a hat. I don't know. I'm already stressing out about this semifinal, and we've not even got there yet because I know what TERUJIMA is going to do. He's going to do some bullshit and make me nervous. But yeah, Kateoka. I like that Kateoka he is very realistic. He's like, yes. He's like, I have high hopes for Sawamura. The manager's got high hopes for Sawamura too. Him and Kawakami. He's like, I have high hopes for Sawamura. He's like, but this is an all-out war. I want all my pitchers ready to go. And I'm like, but Nori, something's wrong and I don't like it. But okay. So then we have Koshu and Sawamura pitching. And I like what the manga does. The manga shows like when Sawamura pitches the curveball, like the ball goes slowly across the panels. It's almost like the ball is going slow to show that it doesn't go as fast as Sawamura's normal pitch because Koshu is just like catches it and is like, what was that? So I like that the manga almost makes it look, you can feel the ball moving slower. Like I thought that was pretty cool. But Sawamura, he's like, your curveball kind of sucks. And Sawamura's like, it's fine. And then Sawamura does the slider and admits to Koshu he has no control over it. Like his elbow drops and it is a weird break. And I love that Miyuki was just watching from the sidelines. I'm like, you would, you gremlin. I love that Miyuki couldn't let it go. He's like, I've got to go see them practice. I've got to make sure that Sawamura doesn't do something stupid. I love that Miyuki is just waiting from the sidelines, like on the fence like this, like, hey, you should know this about his slider. And Koshu's like, what? It's great. that the elbow drops at an odd angle when he's throwing, and that Miyuki is afraid that it's going to mess up his fastball, so that's why he's not had it. And then Sawamura just comes out left field and mic drops, and he's like, yes, that's true. My elbow does drop weird like I normally do a slider, but what if I held it a certain way where it didn't mess up my fastballs? And Miyuki and Koshi were like, what? So yeah, and then that's where we stop the volume. How dare you, Terujima? How dare you? How dare you throw us that cliffhanger? Okay. So yeah, so this was a good volume. This is a good volume, a nice way to round out the Sousei game. I'm glad we've rounded it out. Good to know. I'm not happy about Nori. I'm worried about Nori. Of course I am. I'm terrified of the semifinal because you just know that Terujima is going to give us some bullshit. And I'm like, don't you do this. Don't you set up this. Chris Senpai's going to be watching. I just want Sawamura to do good. I want Sawamura to do good against Kosei. I really do. I just want Sawamura to do well against Kosei. Like, we've built it up all this time. Here's the thing. I know that going into this, 99.9% chance Inashiro is making it to the final. Let's be real. That's going to happen. Okay. So I have a feeling that Inashiro is going to think that Ishidai Third is going to win. I just have a feeling. And so I live for Mei and Sawamura content because we don't have a lot of it. We got a few volumes back where Sawamura was intently watching Miyuki as an ace. But I want to see... Mei never watches Sawamura. He doesn't care about Sawamura. Mei has always wanted to see Furuya, but he doesn't acknowledge Sawamura. And I'm like, I want Mei to see Sawamura pitch well. And if they win, I want Mei to see Sawamura pitch well going into the final where he'll be like, oh, okay, this is what I'm going to face in the final. This battery, him and Miyuki. But I don't know if that's going to happen or not. So I don't know what to expect. I going into this series, I plan for the worst. I prep myself for the worst. And so then when great things happen, I'll be like, oh, okay, great. But I'm going to prepare myself for the worst going into the semifinal against Ichidai Third. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be rough. I'm preparing myself for the worst. Okay? Okay? So we'll see. No spoilers. Please no manga spoilers, but I'm curious to know your thoughts about this volume below. I'm curious to know your thoughts about Sousei. What you guys all thought about Sousei. I ended up liking Sousei as a team a lot. I liked their coach quite a bit, especially at the end there. And Nagira and Nara, they were fun. They were a good rivalry. But now it seems only fitting that we're going back to season 1. In season 1, it was Sato, Inashiro, and Ichidai Third. And we're back to those 3 teams again. Funny that. So yeah. I'm curious to know if we're going to start out this next volume with Inashiro like mopping the floor with old what's-its-face with what's that team, Sugata. Yeah, Sugata. Are they going to mop the floor with Sugata or not? I don't know if we're going to start with that or if that's going to be the game after semifinals. I don't know. But in any case, I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. I hope you all enjoyed this reaction and discussion. But yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with volume 25 of Ace of the Diamond. Bye.